Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer, and today I'm gamesplaining Lisboa. In the game of Lisboa, everyone is trying to rebuild the city of Lisbon in Portugal. In the mid-1700s, they had an earthquake which destroyed the city, and then they had fires that wiped out more of the city, and then they had a flood which wiped out even more of the city. So the king at the time was trying to decide what to do with the city, and all these people were coming with different ideas of, hey, let's rebuild it with bigger streets, or with streets that focus on one type of shop, or let's just get rid of the whole thing and start again at a different location. So this game of Lisboa is about rebuilding that city, and you coming to the nobles with your ideas of how to rebuild the city. I'm going to put this building in here, and gaining influence and gaining wigs for some reason. Apparently they liked wigs when the city was in devastation, but that's the reality of it. The game is about wigs. Instead of points, you have a wig track. So if you can get your head around that, I guess it's instead of having to gain points to win the game, whoever has the most wigs wins, because the 1700s likes wigs. Okay, I don't know that much about history, but let's just go with it and move forward. Now, this is a massively heavy game. It took me so long to get my head around the rules on this. I had at least 3 attempts of pulling the game out, setting it up, and going, I can't get my head around that, putting it away. Then pulling the rules out and starting to read them and getting through a page and going, I can't do it, put it away. And doing it again and putting it away until I had a friend say, hey, we're playing that on this date. And so I fumbled through it, and then on the date of the game, the day of the game, I still hadn't got through the rules, so I just blocked everything out, read through the rule book, okay, I've got a vague idea, and then we sat down and we tried playing it, and it was tough. It was a super steep learning curve on that game, and we got a lot of things wrong. I haven't told my friend who I was playing against what we've got wrong yet, because I haven't spoken to her again, but we got a lot of stuff wrong. This game has a lot of detail. It's another Vida Lasada game. So it's in the same line from Eagle Griffin Games as Vinhos and The Gallerist. Another game from Vida Lasada is Kanban, which you've heard me talk about. I have done playthroughs and Gamesplains and Gamesplaids of both Vinhos, both versions of Vinhos, and The Gallerist in recent memory. So this one's the 3rd one. I will hopefully get one for Kanban up really soon, and that will complete my Vida Lasada kick. I am so in love with his games. I really love a good, heavy Euro. This is another one of those few Euros that are sitting above that 4-level heaviness on Board Game Geek. If I had to look at the 3 Eagle Griffin ones, this trilogy of games, I would probably suggest that it goes Vinhos, Gallerist, Lisboa. Now, if you talk to Vida Lasada and he's come out and said that this is a simple game, you have only a handful of decision, and this is correct, you have a handful of decision. The game is, you take a card from your hand, you play it somewhere, you then do some actions, and then you pick up another card. That's absolutely correct. Sounds super simple, and it is. Within I get to play this card, you have 2 options. You play it up there, or you play it down here. If you play it down here, you have 2 options as to where to play it down here. Once you do one of those 2 up-down options, you then have 2 options. I'm going to use my card up here, depending on what it is. Actually, that tells you what to do with it up here. Depending on what it is, tells you where to play it down here. I've got 2 options up here. Okay, so if I take one of the options, super easy. If I take the other option, I've got 3 options. Within those 3 options, there's a couple of things attached to them. When I play down the bottom here, I go on the bottom of the board or the top of the board, depending on which of the type of card it is. That's fine. And now I've got 2 options. One of the options, super simple, sells some stuff. Second option is those 6 things. Or really, you're choosing 3 things, and within each of those 3 things, you've got 2 options. Sounding similar to the Gallerist? Yeah. Gallerist, 4 options. Within each of the 4 options, 2 options. Straight ahead. Okay. Keeping your head around all of those options is where the difficulty comes in. More importantly, understanding the minutiae of those options is really important as well. Because it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to build that house or that building. It's saying, I'm going to build that building, and understanding that I'm going to have to pay, how much I'm going to have to pay to build it, because if you can't pay it, you can't build it. Understanding what effect that will have on the points. If you build a certain type of building, it gives points to everything that fulfills a certain criteria. So you might be giving points to other players, understanding that, understanding how the treasury track works, and how that moves up and down, and depending on where it is, that's actually going to cost you more or less. Understanding how influence works. Influence is really important. It's really hard to gain influence, really easy to spend it. And so getting into a spot where you're not caught without any influence is really important. Getting into a spot where you're caught where you don't have any resource is really important that you don't do that, because any of those bottom actions, the ones down here, you're going to then have to spend at least one resource to do the selling or the up there action. And if you don't have the resource, you can't do it, which means if you don't have any resources, you can't play anything down into this bottom, into your own board. You're going to have to play something onto the actual main board. So that limits you if you get into a position where you don't have resource. On top of all of that, you've got to manage this idea of, at the beginning of the game, you only have 2 things in your own boards that you're able to keep, and you're only able to keep 2 of each resource at the beginning. In order to gain more space, you're going to have to clear rubble from the main city board, and by building buildings, either buildings that will help everyone or buildings that will create resource for yourself. And by building those buildings, you will gain cubes of rubble. Once you get a set of all 3 types of rubble cube, that releases 1 more spot in your own portfolio, so you're able to have a 3rd card sitting there that will have ongoing actions and ongoing benefits, and it will release 1 more space within your warehouse, so you can hold 3 items, and that keeps going. The whole game is played over 2 halves. The first half finishes when either 3 of the 4 decks have been disappeared by people drawing them, so at the end of your turn you draw 1 from the deck, so that kind of limits the amount of turns it's possible to have, but the length of that half could be reduced dramatically if one player is just gaining rubble and rubble and rubble and rubble, because as soon as one player has collected 2 sets of the 3 types of rubble, so 6 cubes of rubble minimum, that ends the first half, and we get a new selection of cards which are a little bit more powerful, have a few extra benefits on them, and they replace the first half cards, and then we play through another period is probably a better way to say it. Of course, there could be various lengths. The box itself seems to be suggesting a 2-hour game. My first game took about 3 hours, so that was with 2 players. So just be aware of that. On the learning stages, it's going to take long. But if you watch the Gamesplaned video, you'll see that I actually rip through those turns fairly quickly because I know what I'm doing. So I think once you've got the game down, then you might have a chance of getting down to 120. But if you've got at least 1 new player with you, it's probably going to take upwards to that 3-hour mark. So just be aware of that. Back to what I was saying. The second half of the game finishes when, same detail, we get to 4 sets of cubes are gone, or the 3 piles of cards are gone again. So there's a limit to how long the game can go. It kind of works out as a game timer with those cards disappearing. You have the ability, and I've done this, where I might want to take that card for a particular ability, but it's the last card in the 3rd of the stacks. And I've left it to take a card from the other stack, simply because I want to be able to play a little bit longer. When you get to the end of the game, whoever causes that final condition to happen, we finish the round, so everyone's had the same number of turns, and then everyone gets 1 more turn. So if you've got that in mind, you can kind of build yourself up and go, okay, this is what I need to do on the last couple of turns. What do I need in order to be able to do those actions on those turns? As I say, I really love this game. The negative on it is the minutiae. There is so many fine detail mechanisms kind of doing this all around itself that it's really easy to forget stuff. In so much so that I've actually written up a piece of paper that I'm keeping in the rules that's things that I keep missing. Little details on how clergy tiles work, for example, or the movement of that and sale of influence and things like that. Little details I keep forgetting. Because when you do one thing, quite often that will affect the treasury, that might affect the value of coins, probably not on the same thing, but there's a whole bunch of other little areas and aspects that if you forget about them, you're going to be looking at going, why is that treasury token right up at the top there? I'm sure that should have devalued by now. I can't remember how it happens. What would be really helpful in a game like this, and this is a note for Eagle Griffin Games and any other publishers, if you have a super heavy game with a lot of minutiae, just having a thing at the back of the page about each element on the board, so for example treasury, and say this is where to find the rules, or this is why, or what would cause the treasury token to move up or down. This is what would cause this token to move up or down. So that you can really quickly go, I'm sure something should have happened there, look at it and go, oh, that's where it is. It's a slight different angle on how we come at rule sets, but you know me, I love getting into the rule sets and saying, hey, this isn't working. Why can't we fix it? It seems like a so super simple thing. It could be worded as an FAQ. Some games actually do that wording where you're looking and go, how do I get points? And it'll say, these are the different ways you can get points. I would really appreciate that in a game like this, because of that fine detail. Quite often I'll miss the movement of that treasury marker, which is why I bring it up, or I miss what happens when the clergy tile, the cardinal, gets all the way around to getting influence again. I didn't quite grasp that or remember that. Because there's so many details, it's hard to remember, and then it's hard to find in the rulebook when you're looking for it. And so what you end up doing is scanning, looking for the picture of the item that you're trying to manipulate, and it's not always the right spot, because that picture might come up a few times because it gets used in a lot of things. And that's one of the things I love about the game, but it's frustrating as well. So I'm going to leave that there. I think I've spoken enough about Lisboa. Please go on and watch my videos. This is one of the few pairs of videos where you must watch both of them in order to play the game. I've split it up. There's kind of 4 actions on each, available each turn. I split up 2 of them, do the first video, 2 of them do the second video. If you're looking at the rulebook, I actually work backwards through them, 4 through to 1 rather than 1 through to 4. It just makes more sense to me. I hope it makes more sense to you as well, without having to put things off too often to say, oh, I'll explain that later. I am pretty sure that I've covered this game within the 2 videos in its entirety. So please use this as a resource. Share this with your friends if you want them to come and play Lisboa with you. If you don't have a copy of Lisboa, I really strongly suggest getting one. Watch the playthrough to get a feel for how it actually runs on the table. This is also one of the only times that you'll probably see me using the moving camera during the Gamesplanation videos. And it's just because the board is so immense, it would not fit on this static camera film video. I couldn't get to a spot where I'd be far enough away to take the whole board in, but also be able to get the resolution on close-ups so you can see what's going on. So hopefully it works. Hopefully you'll forgive me if it's a bit shaky, but I think it was worth it in the end. So please, if you've got any comments or suggestions, write them below. If you've got any games that you wish to be Gamesplaned, please shoot me an email at thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at thegamesplainer to see what games I've been playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.